Okay, we are live. Episode 2 of Azerothian Diamonds with Brilvian and Chrix of Girl Talk, also Shadowstrike Alliance. Just a disclaimer, I was an officer in this guild for a period of time, but I wanted to honor the people that put in the work and managed things outside of what everybody else did that was an officer. So here we go. So let's start with how we all know each other, which basically is through Girl Talk. Um, I I re-rolled on the server, came in later. I was 60 looking for a guild, and I think Nostro was the one that invited me to the guild. Um, what about you guys? How did you guys meet through the guild, or?
Yeah, pretty much when I joined the server, Shadowstrike, I joined the first guild that invited me, and that was Praetorian Guard. And then that fell apart, and I joined Girl Talk because they were one of the first guilds to do a MC pug. So that's how I got roped into everything.
Yeah, I came into Shadowstrike Alliance looking for a decently hardcore experience. I felt that that was going to be required to clear the content, so I initially joined up with Echo, and then it became very clear, even before I hit 60, that they had some structural problems that I didn't want to spend 8 to 12 months with, and so I jumped ship to Girl Talk, who at the time also had a very early MC group going.
So who's the GM at that point? Who started the guild?
So the guild was started by a guy named Beast who worked in a law firm with a bunch of other people who were his officers. So they were all friends, they all knew each other. And one thing led to another. He got banned a couple times, and so I somehow ended up as the GM because after all that.
And then so Beast had some, let's just say, some troubles in the game,
Yeah,
and was not around for too much longer after that.
no, he got his second ban was probably week 3 or 4 of Molten Core, and I was a semi officer at that time. 'Cause I was one of the few people, like, taking like, raid leading, helping out, figuring everything out. Cause I knew something was not gonna him getting banned was a bad sign at the start, and it wasn't gonna last long. So, yeah, after his second ban, Brilvian helped me out with a couple of the stuff logistics-wise behind everything.
It's also worth noting that Beast was definitely pushing his position as GM probably further than you can get away with. He was, for example, attempting to organize an Onyxia, not participate in the Onyxia because he was attempting to rank to 14, and then reserving the Onyxia bag for gold, which would just go into his pocket, not the guild bank. He also was going to come into the MC run for just go and get it, but still take the bindings in order to continue ranking during the rest of the raid. And this did not fly very well long term. Um, we actually had the first time Puppet really called bullshit was was at that, and I actually wound up taking over that Onyxia then.
Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. We'll get into some of those things later. But so how did the leadership change? Because he got banned, and then he obviously was still GM. So then who was the next GM after him? And I want to go back even further a little bit after this, but just to finish that up.
The GM that was after him, like, who became the GM role after him?
Yeah.
That was me. I
Okay.
took the next role after him.
Okay. Let's go back a bit. So, Brill, let's start with you. What are your experiences with MMOs, besides WoW, if any, and also with WoW, and how long you've been playing?
Functionally no experience outside of WoW. Um, Outside of very brief stints in retail that I don't even count. I started with Northdale, one of the Light Soul private server projects. I played that server um, up to a KT kill. And then Classic released, I played that very seriously throughout its entire lifespan. Wound up getting something like 660s, 280 ashes. Um, During the Classic portion of that, I also wound up leading a guild along the way, and then I moved into Classic Era service, which 10-second plug. Those are still alive. You should check them out. Um, and I led a guild on Classic Era, which was one of the more interesting times I've ever had guild leading. Just due to the diversity there. And then I came to Season of Mastery, and this story picks up.
So, how strong is your connection to the whole Blizzard universe? Do you play other Blizzard games? And also, have you ever been to like a BlizzCon or met up IRL with WoW people, that kind of stuff?
No, I don't have any real meaningful connection to Blizzard outside of Classic WoW.
Okay. Now, what about you, Chrix? Experiences with MMOs? How long you been playing WoW?
So I've been playing WoW since late Vanilla. I didn't start raiding until probably Wrath of the Lich King, or Wrath of the Lich King is when I started to pick it up. As for like the Blizzard genre, like what games of theirs have I played? I've played StarCraft 2. I've been invested in Blizzard since I can't even remember. Like my first games were Warcraft 3, StarCraft 2, Brood Wars. So I would say I'm fairly invested. Like my life in this company. I don't like some of the shit I've heard about it and everything. Well, that's a whole different story. Um, but as for like guildies, have I met or BlizzCons? I haven't gone to any BlizzCons. I always want to. I've met guildies in real life. One of my friends, Escher, Melissa, came to my wedding, and I've raided with her and played with her since late Warlords of Draenor.
Okay, so how many hours do you guys estimate you have in WoW on all your characters? What's your guess? I know my
I
number because I calculated it, but I'm curious to what you guys think.
I have no idea. It's disgusting. Is all I got.
I'm gonna go with obscene. 4 digits.
Not healthy. How about that? Is
Four
that an
digits
answer?
probably starts with a crooked number.
Yeah, it's not a healthy one. WoW is pretty much like the game that I played. I've played Final Fantasy and everything like that, but this is the only game that's ever been able to pull me back in, and I hate it.
Yeah, it's same. It's hard for me to put down. I just dive into it and
Yep.
okay. So we kind of went over the guild creation. Let's jump forward. So it was not created by anybody here. However, the ownership was transferred to Chrix. And then I guess in my eyes, I think Brill was GM during the period that I joined or shortly thereafter that. But because I know we reformed and that's a whole other topic. But so what made you take on that role as GM? What made you go, okay, I'm going to do this and step into it?
So for me taking the role, I so I started SOM, and my whole goal was I don't want to GM. I don't want to be an officer. I don't want anything to do. Just let me raid, let me tank, DPS. I'll do what we need. I just don't want this. But I got unanimously voted in Girl Talk to be the GM because I was one of the more easygoing people to talk to. I was always there to help players. I was always online, and no one ever had any issues with me. And then a couple people like Brill and some of the other raiders like Evil and some other members We're like, how about you're the head of the GM, you're the face. Like, so I would talk and I'd say all this other stuff. But as for like officers and logistics behind the curtains, was a lot of teamwork between me and the officers.
Actually, so technically you were voted in
Yeah, no,
twice.
I was voted in twice.
Yeah. Okay.
It just happened.
Okay, so who wants to explain the origin of the name Girl Talk? Brill, you want to
Uh,
go for it?
yeah, go
Uh,
for that one.
so Beast pre-SOM had a basically a poll with a bunch of guild names listed, and people could freely propose them. Apparently, Girl Talk got a large number of reactions, and it was not a fan of Beast, it was not a fan of mine, but apparently enough people liked it that it stuck. So if you're considering making a guild, small word, do not let the public vote on the name.
Did you guys have? I know there was some consideration of changing the name. Do you guys remember any of the other names?
The only name we were gonna even consider changing it to was OnlyFans. We just thought I don't know, we voted on names and OnlyFans was like the best one. We had some other ones like mansplaining just to kind of run off the theme of girl talk, but uh getting everyone to agree on one name to unanimously was a challenge alone on itself.
It's also worth noting that um, after Beast's second ban, he still had GM for quite a while. And he eventually did log in and transfer the Guildbank and the formal GM title to Chrix. Or he transferred Guildbank to me and formal GM title to Chrix. Um, but that was one of the reasons we were strongly considering a rebrand is we were in a position where we might have to reform the guild no matter what.
Yeah, that's right around when I joined, and I remember we did a poll. I just joined as a member at that point, but there was a poll out to reform the guild, and I actually voted yes to do it. And I was like, okay, let's just do a fresh start, you know. And but yeah, that was around that time. Anybody have any experience with leadership outside of WoW?
In my job I used to do in logistics specialist, a factory. I was the second person, not the supervisor, but the boss essentially in that position. So like dictating and telling people like what to do and how to do stuff was kind of like what I'm used to in a sense. I don't I'm not by any means like a Hitler in a position by nothing. I'm very easygoing and I never had many employees like say negative things about how I was running my shift and my positions. So I'm fairly used to it, I guess is the word.
It's not really something that I do outside of WoW. That most of my leadership experience actually does come from WoW, which is a little unusual, I guess.
Yeah, same. I don't really have too much leadership experience. I was more, you know, in terms of jobs, I was always kind of, I'm like what you guys saw me do as an officer, like organizing stuff, making sheets, you know, looking at behind the scenes kind of stuff.
Worker bee.
Yeah. I think many people don't realize that being a GM is pretty much like a full-time job, or part-time something. I mean, it's a big commitment. You're spending numerous hours outside of playing the game, just managing stuff and managing people. Um, do you guys agree, or do you see it differently?
I 100% agree with it. Like even though we spread out our jobs essentially to all the officers and guildies to help out, we all worked together to make sure we all achieve the same goal. But as like the GM, like it's me making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. I was also the raid leader of both our teams, so I had to make sure everyone was bringing their consumes. People were actively doing their mechanics properly. If we had someone do like a no show real quick, we had to figure out who we're bringing in real quick. If we had any spare people on the sidelines, it was a lot of logistics and like paying attention to all the little nuances and little things.
it's absolutely a part-time to full-time job, and you will always eat all of the hours that you give it and ask for more. This also was exacerbated a little bit by a choice of loot systems that we went loot council that resulted in a lot of long officer discussions just to nail down the 5 or 10 most critical items.
Yeah, when you're officer, when you have to like dictate a certain time frame on a day every week just to talk about, hey, player A is gonna get loot B, and player C should be considered for loot D, and it takes anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours to sometimes three, depending on where you are and what phase. It can really be draining.
So yeah, that's we probably had 6 or 7 people in those conversations on average times 3 hours is 24 man hours devoted just to loot. That's not to rostering. That's not any other guild organization or activity. That's just who is getting the premium loot. That's not even the minor pieces, which we can figure out in a raid.
What are some of the positives of being a GM? And along with some, well, let's start with the positives. What do you guys like about being in that role?
As a GM, I like it because it allows me to see where everyone's at. Because I'm always a really helpful player when it comes to raiders and guildies and everything. Because you need to have a community and WoW as a guild to success. Like there's plenty of guilds out there that are toxic and they can get it done, but it doesn't ever feel good. But I like to just know that as the GM, that people are here following because what the guild is. Everyone's working together for the same goal, so everyone's here working together and making sure we're all achieving the same thing. It's hard to explain, honestly. It's just it feels good at the end of the day that you and 39 other players are all working together to achieve the same thing, and you can actually like have fun at the same time doing it. Like it feels good, like you put all those hours in to get to where you are, and you can see all those hours you've worked hard for just succeed and flourish in front of you, essentially. Like when AQ40 comes out, when the new raid comes out, you have to plan stuff. You have to make sure that you have strats down for the bosses, you have the consumables, you have everything you need. And then that raid night finally happens, and you and your guild that you've worked hard to keep together and work together, and you get like either a really good clear night, not a full clear, but like BWL instance for us. We got to Chromagus night one, and that was phenomenal for us. Just getting that progression with the people you worked hard with and you been with all these months and everything, you can't get that anywhere else.
So the question was, what do you get out of it as a GM? And I think there are kind of two big answers to that. The first one is I get the guild that I want to raid in. I get I've built this guild in my image of what an ideal guild looks in, so I get to raid in that environment that I've had designed, and that's a big positive. You also, as the GM, kind of de facto, get kind of one big ask per server life cycle. So if there's something you really want, you have a long term WoW goal. For me, it was Scarab Lord that I really wanted to do that quest line. Um, you have the ability to do that, and really no one is going to fight you too terribly hard on that as long as you only play that card once.
Okay, so let's go with the flip side of that. What are some of just a couple negatives besides the time commitment?
If I can't say time commitment, god damn it.
Well, I mean, you can.
Yeah, well, the biggest one for me is I'm a 30-year-old husband with a 9-year-old daughter. So time commitment is a big thing for me. And that is one of the biggest things as a GM that you're gonna need is time. Because it's nothing there is not one thing you can do that can get settled in one night. It is gonna drag on, and you need to deal with everyone's bullshit because you are the person they're gonna come to and cry with either screenshots of someone said this, someone said that. Player A is being an asshole to player B, or well, I didn't get my DFT. I'm fucking out. Dude, you have to be able to roll with the punches essentially because you're gonna get beat down so hard by players.
Yeah, saying, aside from the time commitment, what are the cons of being a GM to me almost feels like asking Mrs. Lincoln, well, aside from that, how was the play?
Jesus
Um,
Christ.
it it really, I can't overstate enough the amount of time you need to do it right. Yes, there is the additional stress the drama creates, but really what that is it's just asking for more time for you or another one of your officers to go in, have the conversations, see if it can be smoothed out, or if you need to make an officer level call.
Right, because at the end of the day, we're all playing a video game, but if you're an officer or a GM, then there's more to what it's just being a video game, depending on how you want to progress. If you want to make a good guild that can progress and do the content when it comes out, then there's all these nuances you need to deal with, and damn it if you're not ready. Huh.
Let's go into the guild's structure. Can you guys describe the hierarchy of power? How many officers we had? Who was in charge of what? That kind of stuff.
So at the very beginning, when I'll start with Beast and him. Pretty much it boils down to Beast is the god, and his officers are his little minions. And they kind of handled a little bit, but nothing really special. Everything had to be ran by him first, and he had the last say on everything. So that obviously didn't fly, and he got in the whole banning. So and then I became into charge. Um, we had the officers there that were still playing, but they slowly died off because Beast wasn't playing. And we added Brill to the charge as an officer too. I slowly started spreading out the load of everything that needed to be done. Like, hey, can you do this for me? Make sure you're doing the raid signups. Player A will be my guy that's recruiting, that's posting, looking out for potential people. I have someone who's looking in the Discord for the server, checking that out for people who are looking. And then we would have another officer who was working towards like rostering, working towards uh checking out their class, making sure we'd have like a designated warrior officer that would check with his warriors and make sure everyone's specking correctly, making sure everyone has the items they want. What items do they want in the future? So when we talk about loot council in our meeting, we could kind of speed it up and get an idea what everyone's wish list looks like. At the end, it was more the officers at the end were dealing with a lot more than as the that I was the guild master was. Um, and I didn't sit as the guild master and say I have the last word of everything. It was if it was a higher vote to do it, then yes, we would. But I always ran everything by the officers, and we always did votes in the guild. We wanted to get everyone's perspective. What are people saying? If they're going to improve this, or more people going to hate this? I never wanted to do it so. I never wanted to run it like how Beast ran it. I fucking hated it how he did.
Yeah, so in Girl Talk and in both of the previous times I've GM'd, what I've basically taken upon myself is I will do the master looting and I will run the guild bank as my core competencies, and then I will find essentially a main tank warrior as an officer who will be able to raid lead and do the main tank roles. And that for the most part covers a core that you can then expand with other officers into rostering, into um, other loot loot decisions into guild preparation, etc.
Now, some guilds do have that, top-down structure where one person is pretty much calling all the shots, and I think generally you see that in more higher performing world first speed kind of guilds. I mean, I don't know the inner workings of who's actually doing what, but I just get that sense. Like, when do you guys think that works, and when does it not work, and what kind of environment is that, where you have that, one person who's barking everything? And
I would have to say I've never really been in a guild that it's been like that. A lot of the ones most of the ones I've been in have all been in the same sense how I ran Girl Talk, where it's kind of just a community of people working together and helping. And I mean, I'm not saying I've been in super casual guilds my entire time playing WoW. I've been in some top guilds on on those servers I played on, and I always try to play the best of my ability. But when it would work, if only if like that whole guild is like okay with that, and like they all are still accepting it, I guess.
so it's a trust thing. Do you think it's a trust thing? Like,
It would have to be more of a trust thing, yeah. You'd have to trust that the player who's at the top, it like actually knows what the hell he's saying.
Yeah, for me, it's something that works if you have someone with pretty impeccable levels of trust who's also willing to put stupid hours into running it. That they have to know the game inside and out from multiple different roles, and then they have to be willing to put the 60 to 80 hours a week in if they want to run it solo, and that's just not common.
okay. So what was our guild motto, slogan, mission statement?
We never really had one. The one that kind of like stuck that just got thrown around a lot was sweating with the oldies. Because a lot of
Right.
yeah, because a lot of our raiders were like high 20s, mid 30s, some 40s and 50s. Like we wanted to progress at a reasonable rate, but we weren't willing to put in these ludicrous hours or performing some of these ludicrous things that people were doing. Like we weren't forcing our raiders to do everyone needs to be a jewel crafter. We weren't doing that. And I know like some speed guilds where you're all performing stuff like that. Like we wanted to end the content, our raid night, at a reasonable hour, but still having fun at the same time. And we're not wasting our time essentially. So we asked all our raiders just to perform the best you can. Like for these 6 hours, like you're our raiders. Like be here, be ready to go. And that was it. That was our motto. Like be here and just be ready.
Yeah, we put a pretty heavy emphasis on guild culture and good cultural fits, that we definitely did not want, one person screaming gamer words at 39 people who were trying not to screw up and draw the wrath.
Okay, we'll get into guild culture in a bit. So, in terms of the guild focus and speed, uh, and the environment, would you say it was? I'm gonna probably repeat this endlessly in every episode, but if you had to put like a tag on it, was it casual? Was it midcore, semi-hardcore, hardcore? Even those things often don't
Yeah.
mean anything.
I would say semi-hardcore. Like we wanted to progress at a really good rate. We wanted to see the content when it got released. We didn't want to clear a phase later or something, but we weren't gonna go super hardcore to it, like slamming our hands against the wall. We have guides on everything. I don't know. Yeah, like you say, it's really hard to explain like a guilds thing, like semi-hardcore casual. Like people who are in the casual guilds are fucking lunatics because they spend there more hours than anyone else.
I described it as straddling the line between semi-hardcore and hardcore, but ultimately semi-hardcore is kind of a useless term.
Yeah.
Uh, Giving some actual numbers for where we were, we had probably 30 out of 40 people with a flask on every given raid night. We had probably 20 out of 40 engineers. We did not require engineering or a flask. Basically, everyone had the basic DPS consumes, all but a small handful of people knew what they were supposed to do on any given fight, and we got decent results. We were service second BWL,
Yep.
and we're consistently nibbling up at server fastest, which perhaps shallow pond, um, but that's kind of the perspective we're coming from.
Like we weren't looking to be the best, but we're looking to be upper in the top 5, I guess you would say. Like we don't want to be the bottom, but we want to be up there with the big boys.
Did we do any kind of in-depth recruiting, or did we just invite whoever came in, or was that something that you guys wanted to do that just didn't have time? Like sitting and doing like a quick 15-minute interview over Discord or something like that.
For the people that I did recruit, I did do a small interview, but for the most part, we gave everyone a shot because it's season of mastery. It was classic WoW. It's really, really hard to mess up a rotation or anything on classic WoW. It's just like the little nuances of everything that you need to figure out. So as for recruitment, we had recruitment posts in the server Discord, and sometimes we would post in trade chat that we're looking for these set kind of classes. These are our raid times. These are our progression. This is what we're asking for. But for the most part, we gave everyone a chance. And if they wanted to try, cool. We'll bring them in tonight. Tell them they're probably not going to get loot tonight unless it's dead weight loot. But we'd see what they do, see if they fit, see how it was, and then after that, we just made our decision.
Recruitment was definitely a big weakness of ours from an officer corps. We didn't have anyone who really took that under their wing and ran with it. We did make it a priority that if you were a new recruit, we tried to get you in on the first week because, let's face it, there are 3 other guilds that you could go to and get in. That guilds attract players in classic. It's the opposite of vanilla, where um, the guild needs the player more than the player needs the guild in classic, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just for reference for anybody who's listening to this, I am using past tense to describe this because unfortunately Girl Talk did disband towards the end there, but we'll get into that later. So this is sort of just past referencing how things were operated when it was functional. Yeah, the selection pool was really rough on our server, unfortunately.
It got worse every week. Like currently, I think the server sits at slightly over 500 players, and about probably a fourth of those are alts.
Yeah, what do you guys think it takes to be that person who is good at recruiting? Because I know for me, like that's not a strong suit of mine. I personally hate messaging people, and you kind of approaching that poaching territory, and I don't mind doing interviews with people, but I was not the type to just start the conversation,
You would honestly, where it is now, like you would just have to poach. You just need to ask, like, are you happy with your guild? Like, do you want to change? Do you want to have a different scenery? But to make like a good recruitment officer is you need to sell your guild better than the guild they're in.
Yeah, and I would also add that running the 20-mans, especially as like a half guild, half pug, is often a very good tool.
Yep.
Anytime you have to pug to fill in your guild slots, that's an amazing recruiting tool because they can legitimately see the product you're offering.
Yeah, anytime we pugged people for raids, we always did a shameless plug like, hey, Girl Talk, always looking for members.
Well, I mean, if you use the 20 player raids as a recruiting tool, you also need to make sure that they're ran well and there's not a lot of dicking around and wipes and stuff like that. I feel like most of our 20-man groups were pretty well run. We didn't have too many issues or anything.
No, I can't remember really any that we ever wiped a lot more than maybe one time because someone DC'd or something along the lines. Like, I stopped around AQ 20 release, so I don't know how those went. But for like ZG runs or only 20 man at that time, they went
Um,
pretty smoothly.
so speaking of recruitment tools, a lot of guilds that were aiming for performance, they will use Warcraft logs as an advertisement in a sense. So what type of player do you think that attracts? People that are looking for the top 3 guilds on the server and that kind of thing.
I think if people are actively looking at Warcraft logs or you're using Warcraft logs to recruit, then you know that you're getting a slightly, I would say, slightly higher caliber player than a normal player that you get from like a trade chat, because that's showing you a player who is willing to put the foot forward to do a little bit of looking like a little I guess to use the internet more because there's so many players that don't. And they play the game, and they don't look outside the game. But if you find someone who's, like, willing to look at Warcraft logs and, like, show, like, "Hey, I want to play at a higher rate. These people, I know they are progressing. I can see their parses. I know what I'm getting myself into." It just shows you you have a higher chance of them being better than, like, TVT does over here, or you pull from trade chat saying, "Hey, this guild looks cool."
Brill, you agree?
Yeah, it's definitely. I think there's definite value in having a strong Warcraft logs, putting down a reasonably quick full clear of an instance, both in terms of you want to get fully progressed through the instance faster than most other guilds because that's when your recruitment pool opens up, and then once you're a little bit deep in the phase, you want to get a decently fast time up on there. Because while 9 out of 10 people probably don't look at that, the 4 people in a raid who did look at that and decide on a guild based on that are going to be some of your top performers.
Like, I can say I've easily used Warcraft logs on retail and classic WoW to either find players or find guilds. It's just so much better than what you're gonna find if you look in trade chat.
So I want to. The question after this one, I think Brill's gonna run away with this one. He's gonna have some awesome answers for this one. So I am excited to hear what he has to say. But first, what was our cooperation like with other guilds? Did we have sister guilds? Did we share a player pool?
You wanna start us off, Brill?
Sure. So we didn't have what I would call a formal sister guild, but we did have meaningful inter-guild cooperation at several stages throughout the server's lifetime. So the first one we did was we set up a guild rare recipe reciprocity agreement with To Be Fair. So that was another group. They ran 3 times the number of raids we did at that point. And basically we made an agreement with them that the really rare recipes where there might only be 1 or 2 people on the server who can do that, we're not going to charge each other exorbitant fees for those. Just a tip for the time that the crafter took is plenty sufficient. That turned out to be one of our better decisions that really took the pressure off of our guildies in terms of in-game financially. Um, the second big thing that we did was we had some good relationships with the GMs of other guilds, and in particular, that paid off with Lost Souls, who we actually wound up merging. They wound up merging into us after they were unable to field a roster, and we were able to give those people a good home for a good couple months. And then the last place we really did a good inter-guild relationship was with Odyssey and Scared Lords. We wound up having a bunch of people in each other's um, Nightmare Fragment phone group. We wound up doing a lot of the 20-man content with each other. So it really is important to develop these relationships with the other guilds and the other GMs, because a lot of the times they are going to be able to bail you out of a situation you can't bail yourself out of.
So what were you looking for when you were choosing these guilds to partner up with? Like, you know, like the exchange of some rare pattern or recipe. You know, why go to one guild over another?
Pure guild culture. I did not really care if they perfectly matched us in level of hardcoreness, but I did very much care that they were culturally compatible. Like if we had went to Echo, who was the most hardcore and in terms of raw gameplay pushing buttons, the most compatible guild with us, uh, no one would have had a good time, and I'm responsible for that as a GM or as an officer.
Yeah, pretty much everything that Brill's saying is like accurate as heck. Whenever we looked for other guilds to work together with recipes or progression or anything, because that near the end, we all knew Psalm was gonna die. We all knew the player base would leave the honeymoon phase, and we would need to rely on each other later down the road. So, for our guild, we worked the best with not pissing anyone off, the best to our knowledge that we knew. So we would always with like for an instance, Sari, when he got his Thunder Fury made, we loaned him a shit ton of um Elementium ore. So he get his Thunder Fury made like that night. And us doing that allowed us to make a good relationship with Sari and Lost Souls, where when he got the Lionheart recipe, anyone in our guild who wanted Lionheart, free of cost, just provide them mats. Meanwhile, he's charging everyone else a couple hundred gold. So with us being friendly and making good relationship with other guilds that meshed well with us, it helped us greatly in helping our raiders itself with like not having to spend a couple hundred gold for one of the best helmets you're gonna have until the end of Nax. And the same thing with Titanic leggings. When Edgy's got those for Odyssey, I was already in good relationship with Odyssey and Edgy's himself. So we had good great deals whenever he was making Titanic leggings.
Yeah, and just as a word of advice to anyone who might be listening to this podcast in the future, even if the deal is a little bit one-sided and not as hard as you can bargain for, still make it anyway, because going with Siri, you know, the trade of Elementium or for Lionheart, you can argue back and forth who quote unquote won. But what happened afterwards was when Lost Souls failed to uh, field a realistic roster that could clear content, we were the guild that had the best relationship with them. And we were able to take all of their players in and provide them with a home. And we also got Siri, who was a top 3 rating on the server, probably.
Also Thunder Fury.
Yes, also Thunder Fury rank 14, the works.
Yeah.
Thunder Fury rank 14, mentally stable. Those 3 things don't often happen.
Yep. Very true.
Okay, so this is my bro question. Uh, Tell me all about the guild bank. How was the guild bank handled? How did you pull this masterpiece off? You were the brain of all those operations, and along with that, how did we fund the guild? Were there taxes? How did we handle donations? I know we considered a GDKP at one point, so all those kind of relate to the bank, and looking forward to this one.
Yeah, this is not a me question because I wiped my hands clean of the guild bank and just gave it all to Brill and said, I have total faith in you. Make it work.
So starting in Classic and using the experience I had done from seeing it once on Northdale, it turns out if you, in the first couple months of a server, know what's going to be expensive and you're thinking 2, maybe 3 raids ahead. So you need to be thinking about AQ40 and MC phase, and you need to be thinking about Max and BWL phase. But so long as you are prepping further ahead of the curve than the big throng of players, you can get things far cheaper than most other places. So what I did was I was given a little bit of income from things like the MC cores and the, so the fiery cores, the lava cores, etc. And I knew that those were at their peak value right then, and I sold a good chunk of them. And I used that to essentially set up the guild for life. Um, I had enough of the things that we would need moving forward to that I could do some consumable handouts at the start of phases. Like I handed everyone a small chunk of consumables at the start of BWL. Administratively, the way I handled it was there was a channel in Discord which was just guild bank requests. Person posts in that guild bank request what they need. I mail it to them and thumbs it up, or explain why I don't have it. Usually, I just mail it to them and thumbs it up. Um, and then occasionally for new releases, for example, ZG, we had Jaina, who was a human tailor and enchanter in our guild. We funneled them the rep via the coins and bee juice, and they just made Bloodvine for the entire server and wizard oils for the entire server, and those got mailed out to people week 1.
Now, was there anything that didn't carry over from Classic to SOM in terms of those things that you prepare ahead of time?
It honestly carried over better than I could have hoped to. It did. That Elemental Earth is kind of my barometer, and that was stupid cheap at launch. Part of that was the SOM changes, but I was buying, all kinds of things far cheaper than it should ever get. That Firefin Snapper should never be 45 coppers each, but it was for an extended period in bulk. Stone Scale Oil, Herbs, Dreamfoil, Grom's Blood, Black Lotus. Just knowing what consumables matter in AQ40 and Nax and buying them all in MC phase.
Yeah, this is all like Brill question. I got nothing on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Sprill, because I knew that he'd have a good answer, because our guild bank was well stocked and in my opinion, well managed. And I know that's a big job. I mean, you kind of have to know a little bit of the WoW economics and timing and stuff like that. And for like me personally, I can kind of prepare for myself for future phases, but I don't know if I could ever do it on a massive scale like for a guild like Brill did.
Yeah, we would also hold a little meetings about like what should the care package be for BWL when it launches, like how many GFPP should people get, what other else items should they get, and so we'd have to get a hold of some of our alchemists and just be like, hey, look, I have a huge order for you, and you need to figure this out tonight and get it back to me now, please and thank you.
Well, I also remember early on in Classic, Swift Thistle was actually far cheaper than it should have been. It was a couple silver each because everyone is leveling herbalism. So poor JVP, who was a rogue from the law firm,
Oh
got
yeah.
literal 5,000 Swift Thistle dumped on them. and got asked, please make tea.
I remember that. Yeah, we would do massive alchemy runs for just ridiculous potions and flasks.
Yeah, well done, bro. I'll say that on that mark.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't have asked for a better banker.
So let's talk about the teams, because I know that we went from one team to two teams. There was even talk about three, but that never materialized.
Nope.
And what the differences are between how the guild was run with one and then how it was run with two teams. What were the challenges, and what was the motivation for creating a second team?
The motivation we had for creating a second team was just we had players who wanted to keep raiding together. They wanted to keep doing the content, but we needed another team. So we absorbed a couple guilds when the servers got merged, and we had the player base where we could extend out people with some alts, bring in some new people from the foundation, I think they were called, and we created two teams. And the biggest premise that these two teams were told upon was you are not better than the other team. You're not a team one. You're not a team two. You are team whatever name, whatever name. Like we never really gave either of them a name, honestly. We just said this is like Monday, Wednesday. This is Tuesday, Thursday. Like I didn't want this uh, animosity between the two teams. Like, oh, we're better, we're better. You will suck, you suck. It was just people wanted to play together. We had the player base now that we could extend out for another team, and we did a couple of the challenges was we went from managing 40 people to now we're managing 80 people, so we had to extend out our officer positions to some people from the foundation so they could have a common voice that they could go to and be an officer and have a voice for their team that maybe there's some things they don't like, and it's more people you're dealing with. That's the biggest challenge, honestly. You go from dealing with the common 40 people to now you have another 40 people that's like, "Oh, well, fuck." What do you got, bro?
So when you're thinking about two teams, there's a couple things you need to think about in the move from one to two. The first one is that moving to two teams gives you basically a Super Mario mushroom. That short of complete disasters, the worst guild implosion results in you going back from two to one team. Um, so it gives you a level of redundancy there for if you have to collapse down to a super team to clear some content or whatever the case may be. It is very important to define the relationship between the teams well. We chose to make them equal. I could see an alternative world where you have two stable teams, but one's a main team and one's an alt team. But it's important that everyone's on the same page on what those are.
Yeah, and getting now 80 people all on the same page of you're not better than the other team. You're just team this and team this is a challenge on its own. So it adds more stress on the GM, more stress on the officers and everyone else.
Yeah, and I think some people felt that way, that there was like some significant gap between the two teams, but when you actually looked at the logs and the metrics and stuff like that, they were more similar than they were different. You know, one team might have had a faster kill on X, Y, or Z, but the other team had the opposite, you know, so it was you know, I think some people felt that there was an A B team or one was better than the other, but I mean they were pretty similar.
Yeah. Uh, I never felt that team one or team two was better than the other, but you're definitely right. There were players, and I can tell you that there definitely were players who thought team one or team two was better than the other, and it just that alone sparked some animosity and caused one or two people to G quit because of it. But that's a different story.
So what about the challenges in like you said, having to manage 80 people? Did we feel that it was necessary to expand the officer team to help cover some of that extra load?
Yeah, it was definitely important to expand our officer team a little bit more, like 1 or 2 or 3 people, because we had a couple. It was a different guild. It wasn't just random people we absorbed. We absorbed a different guild from the server merges. So we felt as officers in GM that it was super important to give them a voice. So we promoted after talking to a couple of them that, hey, would you be okay to step up and represent your guild that is now in Girl Talk? And they said, yeah, sure. So we gave them the same roles as our officers, and we made sure, like, hey, this is what we're looking for. I hope we can make this work. Um, just so you know, like, it's hard to explain, hard to word.
So it was definitely important that if you're ever in that position where you need to give a different friend group or clique or guild that's merging into your representation, you really do need to vet and make sure that that person truly does represent, because we got that one wrong. We promoted a failed druid who was instrumental in getting the merge through, but then had almost zero participation as an officer, and that wasn't fair to them, and it really didn't help us or do us any favors.
Nope.
So we
Once
we wound up having to make another round of promotions to actually get them representation, as well as to actually take the load off.
So I do want to go over a sort of reflection question later on, but since we're talking about this now, what are things that you would change in terms of creating a rule set to look for in promoting somebody? Like what are we looking for in an officer?
a level head, reasonable person that is able to see a dispute kind of from both sides and understand what's going on and not just be tunnel vision minded, I guess. Like we were just looking for someone who other people felt comfortable coming to if I wasn't around. I didn't have my phone on me for Discord or any of the other officers wasn't around. Like a person they could rely on that they knew they had reasonable knowledge of the game or the class they played, that if the officer said, "Hey, use Bladestorm more often," sorry, Whirlwind more often, or use your Bloodthirst usage is low, this piece of gear from this dungeon would actually beat your raid piece of gear. Like we were looking for someone like that, just that had good knowledge of what they were saying, and I could rely on them as a member of the guild to back me up in what I'm saying or back up what the officers are saying.
Simultaneously, also someone who is willing to put in the work. That having 10 officers each putting in 40 hours, 4 hours a week is much less effective than having one officer put in 40.
Yeah,
That you want the smallest officer corps that is able to discharge all of the needed responsibilities of a guild, and that's an area where we struggled mightily. That we didn't have anyone willing to shoulder a huge fraction of that load, just personally themselves.
Okay. Since you touched on player skill and having to like correct somebody like on your whirlwind example, I know this is kind of an age-old thing with guild management, but what's your take on expecting a player to know what to do and how to play versus having to teach them or have somebody else teach them? Like, yeah, I guess that's the question.
I'm totally fine with teaching someone how to play the game. It's it's more of a if I tell player A, like if I help them out, and then the next day we're back to square one, and it's like everything I just told them and everything I just sat there with them and showed them that this is what they could do to be doing better, and they're not doing it. Like after that, I pretty much give up. on a player. Like if you're not going to show a little bit of effort, then it's not worth it. But if a player comes in knowing what to do, that's fine. That's like, but the one thing I would ask from that player is don't have this mentality or "Oh, well, you should be doing this instead of this. Like, don't be snobby. Like, understand everyone has their own. Like, everyone started as a noob. Everyone has started from square one. But it's just show effort, and that's all I really ask.
I would say that there is a minimum skill floor, and
Right.
where exactly that is does vary based on the guild. But at a certain point, you are being hurricaned, and you do need to fix and address that rapidly. And if you're being hurricaned but you're showing active improvement, we will be patient with you. If you're being hurricaned but you have no interest in improving, then we will actively try and replace you.
Yeah. Like we've had a lot of players in our guild that were not the best at the very start, but after working with them, helped them out, like they got fairly good. Like it's possible, believe it or not, but you just gotta work with them sometimes. But if they're not showing any effort, you can find somewhere else to go.
How do you deal with people that want to change their roles? Like, let's say you have somebody that's been tanking since day one, and you're 4 phases in, and then all of a sudden they're like, I'm sick of this. I want to switch to a DPS," and you've handed them all this gear, and people are used to that person in that role. How do you guys deal with people that want to change what their primary job is?
We never we didn't really deal with that much. Mostly all our tanks wanted to tank or would tank, or we had warriors that would tank. Um, how we'd handle it would be more along the lines of, can you wait? We gear someone out, like help gear someone else, find someone. They wouldn't swap until we had a dead replacement. Like it wasn't a one for one trade. If it wasn't that, then they are just gonna have to stay tank at that point. Because I can't risk the raid for one player. Just like I just want to swap now.
There were a lot of times where people did want to take an alt or take a less geared tune. And I think we did a decent job in kind of corralling that and saying, okay, in MC and in ZG, and at this time it was early AQ phase or late BWL phase, sure, we'll be flexible. But in BWL and AQ and progression content, no, you need to be taking the tune that we get you out and you're competent on.
I know sometimes we did miss in the enforcement of that. There were some slip ups in that area, like people coming on geared alts and stuff like that, and it's tricky to have to put your foot down, and I don't know how to do that, but
You just gotta be stern with people, is how it is. Like you're not wrong. It's hard to deal with some people like that who are like, "Well, I'm playing my druid today. Suck it. Sorry." Like there was a situation we had to bring a hunter in for a Chromagus kill because we needed the trank shot. Was the hunter geared? Fuck no. But it had trank shot. That's all that mattered. And people were pissed.
let's go to rule enforcement and the people managing. I know we've kind of touched on this already, but it is a game. That's not a job. You can't like reprimand people in that way, but what were some of the rules that we had to enforce?
The main rule we enforced in our guild was just understand you're playing with other people. Don't be a jackass. Like know your audience, I guess is how you'd say it. We had to enforce it a couple times with some people. People were just saying some spicy things, dropping some gamer words, or uh, just being total dickheads to other players, and we had to kick them or talk to them, whichever action needed to be appropriate at that time. But we were pretty lenient with a lot of people. It's just like just understand you're playing with people. Like it's a game. Treat it as a game, I guess, in this sense. Like don't be a bastard. We get it's the internet. Everyone has like this infinite power because what is this? Like you don't know who you're talking to on the other side of the screen. So just don't. I don't know. Say it. Don't be a dick.
I tried very hard to steer the guild as a whole away from controversial issues, politics, religion, the kind of things where people will get into an argument and just not stop. Um, and I was mostly successful at that, but that's definitely a place where I've seen guilds fail.
You had a saying.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. So Brewer had this script. Whenever any of these topics would come up, he'd go through this, 15-second story
Monologue.
Yeah. Do you remember it off the top of your head?
Yeah, I asked people to please refrain from discussion of politics, religion, or the correct role of pineapple on a pizza, or the correct pronunciation of .gif.
Yeah, he would say this so much. The moment someone mentions like Trump or Biden, you would just hear Brill, excuse me, real quick. Shut it down. And that goes back to the whole thing, like know your audience. Like if you want to talk like that stuff, like about that stuff, politics, that's fine. Just know who you're talking to first. Like get a feel for the people you're running with. Don't just come into a raid team and just start saying some horrific thing. Like, please.
What was the kick policy? Like an absolute hard line, this person's getting kicked. What would trigger that?
Go ahead.
So places where I've had to just bright line remove someone. Harassment that goes beyond, you know, goes to the point where you're making other people feel unsafe or unwelcome.
Wait,
Language that's not designed as expletives, but it's designed to actually be hurtful.
do you remember when you was it you that invited that one player into the guild and I hounded you for it because I thought that was the dumbest move ever?
I think I remember this, but let's see.
Yeah, this guy was talking in trade chat and he was just saying the most vulgar shit ever.
Oh, it was a low
And,
level character. It was like a level
yeah,
20 something.
and he got invited to the guild. No, it was Grim. Grimwald invited him. And Grimwald thought he was funny as hell. And I'm like, I swear to God, I am going to remove everyone's invite privileges. Like, after this.
And I mean, in fairness to us, he lasted single digit hours,
Yeah.
if not minutes in the guild.
He was on that line of where we should kick him because he was just saying super vulgar stuff. And we didn't want to, like, ruin the name that we had already created on this server. Like, Girl Talk was a guild where you never really had many issues with. It was a pretty easygoing, relaxed guild that got the shit done. Like, we wanted to be as competent as Echo, just not as have that environment as Echo. And that's what we kind of privileged ourselves on. So if you didn't follow those guidelines, like, sorry. The people we did kick, like, was him, that one player, and one of our officers at a time, just because it didn't mesh well at that time. Like, he was being a little aggressive in a lot of situations. It wasn't what we wanted, so we just gave him the boot.
A GM's presence is a big part of having the guild function correctly and dealing with all these issues that we just talked about. What are the ways that you connect with the guildies and get to know what they need and what makes them tick to keep them retained in the guild, and how are you present in that way?
This kind of goes back to like how many hours you would chime in the game, and my answer was unhealthy. I was always online. I was always had my Discord on me on my phone. I was never too hard to get a hold of, and I was always running dungeons with anyone who needed anything. Like when I was when I was 60 and I still needed gear or people just needed gear, I was tanking left and right for anyone who needed anything. Like it didn't matter what dungeon it was. Give me a dungeon name and we're going. And it gave me such a good a feel of like what people needed and like where people were still at for gear. So I made sure like as a presence as a GM, like it was known, like I'm here, I'm not hard to get a hold of. I had plenty of characters were different professions if you needed it. My bank style was nowhere near Brill's. money bank style, so I couldn't provide the mats Brill could. But if you needed something tanked or something dealt with, I was there and ready to go.
Yeah, as an officer, you just have to put in the hours. That can be hanging out in voice chat, that can be being present in game, but you have to be somewhere. You can't just lurk in the back of the shadows like you can when you're just a rank and file member.
You know, our guild's GM, me and our officers were very like we were always around. If we weren't in Discord, we were on the game doing something else really quick. But like there was plenty of situations you'd catch us in Discord just watching movies all together. When we were farming Scarab Lord for Brill, we were watching bug movies. At least 15 of us were in there just farming bugs, watching Bugs Life, Ants. We almost watched Human Centipede, Starship Troopers 1 and 2. And then it just went down this weird trail of all of us chilling together watching different movies. We need to kill dragons? Fuck it, we're watching dragon movies.
Allegedly, you watch dragon movies on a shared server, right? um, so Brill, I wanted to get to this before, but I missed it. In regards to that third team, I know you wanted to do a GDKP and run that yourself, and that did not materialize. So can you tell me about what happened there?
There was basically zero appetite among the officers to set up a third team. What I think you're conflating that with was when we were actively in the process of looking for a second team, we were going to build that out as a GDKP in order to get it off the ground. And then we had the foundation land in our lap. We had our second team, and we were at over max officer capacity. And so a third team was not something that ever got off of the spitballing level of prep for that. No one was seriously entertaining a third team at any point, to my knowledge.
No, it also got to the point where a lot of people were like, all right, well, these other guilds, Cleve, Echo, and TBD or someone else, we're gonna make a GDKP. And we had a fair enough relationship with these people where if we want to just slide an alt or two in there, then we could have a solid infinite position. Because we were known to be like one of the better guilds of the server, so it was easier to be like, "Hey, we have some good raiders that can provide carry positions for you in your GDKP."
Okay, so speaking of having good players and a good reputation, what were the major milestones for you guys? What did you look back on and say like these were like the biggest moments in the guild's lifeline?
As a guild in a whole, or with other like guilds, I guess.
As for Girl Talk.
I would so creating Thunder Fury for me was massive because I've never had it in when it was current content or anything. I quit classic in early phase 1 due to personal issues in the guild I was in. So anything past Molten Core was brand new to me. And having a guild essentially thrown on my lap twice, being the same guild somehow, and progressing with these people that I loved raiding with. Like there was very few raiders, if any, in Girl Talk that I actually just hated. Like it was it was hard to like for me to be mad at them. And seeing our guild progress little by little and getting BWL finish, me raiding on other characters in the same guild and progressing in that one as well, progressing in other guilds with my third warrior, like Tenebris Tempest, helping them out, and just seeing everyone just being so glad they're here and having fun. Can't fucking beat it. Like it made my love for classic and like this style of gameplay is so much bigger than what it was before. Like just that camaraderie, I guess it is, and like the community that this style of WoW creates is insane.
For me, it was actually the progression chromatic skill.
Oh my
That
god.
was a boss that, for those who did not play SOM, SOM raid bosses have many multiple mechanics added to make them significantly harder, and they have a complete lack of world buffs. So the Chromagus fight was something that I don't think a fight like that had existed in 40-man content before. And getting the coordination level and the level of trust as a guild to be able to kill that and kill it consistently was a huge deal for the guild. And we were able to do that reasonably quickly. We were the second guild through.
Yeah, it was our second night in there after our horrifying. No, yeah, it was our second lockout in there after our horrifying one full night of progression on Chromagus and just everyone beaten down after that.
Yeah, I remember doing the PTR with Brill, and everybody was just so confused about that fight and trying to figure out how everything worked. It was one of the biggest changes, I think, in all of vanilla content.
Yeah, it was insane. It was like good taste for like a lot of classic people to see like what a somewhat retail fight might look like.
The PTRing also that we did as a guild was some of the highlights. That being able to go into Blizzard sandbox with a Blizzard GM there
Yeah,
was an experience that we were able to get a lot of our guildies that not many people have.
yeah, that was a I've never done PTR testing before ever. So having a template character and just free consumes as much as I need and just wasting as much as I needed to get to where I needed to be in the raid fight was so different than what I'm used to.
So, speaking of PTR, would you say that in any guild going forward, that would be something you'd do again and or try to make mandatory? And how would you enforce that?
I
It's hugely context dependent. That if you
Yeah.
were a casual guild, you can't PTR. That's just not compatible. That's if you are a hardcore guild, by definition, you're doing PTR. I would encourage people who are somewhat in the middle to try it. That I found that when we were in that position, it was hugely beneficial. Even just getting some of the raiders in for a small amount of time.
Yeah, it's definitely beneficial. If you're trying to progress, like not to if you're trying to like I guess back to semi hardcore guild saying, if you're trying to be that kind of guild, then yes, I would say at least one time, get in there one night before the content comes out, just to get a look and a feel. Because it really showed when we didn't get to Chromagus on the PTR and we got to him on live that people realized, well, fuck, we need to use the PTR a little bit more. Because that's just how we were trying to progress. That was the style of guild we wanted. We wanted to be serious, but not super serious, I guess. And I still remember you and me, Sezia, going over our AQ40 logs and looking over everything, trying to figure out what the hard mode was and what it even did, because the amount of information we had was a sentence on Wowhead.
Yeah, yeah, that was fun.
That was a great time. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And we're playing our trio bug kill frame by frame, seeing Beef Stew walk over the orb like, all right, he just gained 800 mana, so it does this, and he's attacking faster and moving faster, so it does that.
Yeah, that's in some ways, it's like you don't want to, because you know the old version of the fight. It's like, for me, it was like kind of a nuisance to have to relearn the fight over again.
Right.
But it was also fun to have a challenge to where you had to look at these things and figure out what was actually going on, because there, like you said, there was just no information. Like, you had to look at logs or video.
Yep. And we did
And,
that so much in Psalm, is looking over logs like, what the fuck happened tonight?
and unfortunately, in SOM, there was a big divide between BWL and MC versus AQ40 and DAX. BWL and MC, basically every fight they blew up and put in enough new mechanics. There was a completely new fight that you had to learn from scratch. Um, AQ40 and Nax, they went to more herd modes and the same fight, but without sufficient tweaks that you had to relearn anything.
So let's pretend that Girl Talk was still active, and we were going into phase 6. What would we? How would we prepare for the next phase or the next expansion and whatever example? Do we give players as much information as we can, or do we just roll with it? Because like in AQ, a lot of people prepared a lot for NR stuff, but that didn't actually even need to be necessary, and even in SOM. So how would you guys prepare for the next phase?
We would probably go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna take this one and run with it a little bit. Alright, so there are a few fights in Nax that you just have to be prepared for. I would make sure that the hateful tanks on Patchwork, I would take a look at each one of their stats, because being able to eat a hateful on Patchwork buffless is not trivial. From a guild bank perspective, I would be farming, begging, borrowing, and stealing every single mat for frost resistance, because Saffron does require heavy crafted frost resistance. I would be taking care of that as a guild bank and not making that an individual responsibility, because the quality of frost resist that individuals can get is so much lower than the quality of that crafted stuff. The low feb, you have to have the shadow protection potions, and that's one thing the guild bank was really really working on and hammering home. You've also got just all of the fights in Nax are on a kind of a different base level of difficulty to the base level fights in MCBWL, so we definitely would have needed to do significant amounts of PTR practice, more than is really comfortable with semi-hardcore. And then Chrix, if you want to go with from here.
I mean, I'll pretty much say the same thing you did. At least a couple days or 2, if not 3, of PTR testing. We would not force, because we never forced it on our raiders. We kind of just heavily recommended, like, if you don't want to burn a hole in your pocket, PTR is here to help you. We would give care packages out the same way we do at BWL to make sure everyone had the consumables they needed. Like the resistance pots were just fine. Probably if we could not get the guild PTR group going, we would have people like Brill or other officers, or I would join pugs on the PTR. Just get as much information as we can from either prior classic WoW or as much PTR SOM testing as we can to fill our raiders' little brains up as much, and just have them know, like, day one, like, hey, we're not looking to probably clear this day one, so let's get in there, get as much information as we can, and go with it.
It would also be all of the alt rogues would be on deck to do frozen rune farms, and all of the mages would be doing some trash farms to get the word of thorn for the rogues, just to accelerate the rate at which we can get that frost resist gear, because Saffron, without world buffs on Horde, is a heavy frost resist check that you have to prepare for in a guild setting, full guild setting.
What were the big struggles that Girl Talk had, and what are things that you would look back on and change if you could do Girl Talk all over again?
Biggest struggle we had was just roster boss, like everyone else. Like keeping those players around. And it wasn't like we were losing them to other guilds. We were just losing people who didn't want to play the game anymore. They were burnt out. After they got their fill of SOM, they got their fill of Classic. I'm like, all right, wipe my hands clean. I'm done. I'm gonna go back to retail or TBC. If anything we could do different, I honestly don't know. I like the structure of the guilds we had for the most part. Maybe take the knowledge we have from the loot council decisions we made in SOM and use that to better our decisions in the next season or whatever it would be. Because don't get me wrong, we definitely made some fucking poor ass choices in Loot Council. We had some things go under the radar that we messed up on as officers or GM, and no one's perfect, so I'm not blaming anyone. It's just shit I didn't know personally, and
So
shit
you
some people didn't know.
you would say mostly it was about the Loot Council.
Yeah, like as the guild a whole, like Raiders and everyone, like I thought everyone meshed well together. Everyone pretty much got along. Everyone understood the premise of what the guild was. Like, don't be a bastard. Essentially, it's just loot decisions. I guess that was the biggest thing that we ever had any issues of.
I'm gonna mildly disagree with that. I think that we did overall about as well as you can hope to do within a loot council system. That yes, we did have some that we messed up on, but overall, we got the vast majority of them. I feel right. The places where I think that we would try and improve if we had it to do all over again is kind of officer selection and officer time commitments that we needed. Um, we needed fewer officers doing more hours on average, and
Yeah.
we needed more help so that those officers didn't burn out. Um,
Yep.
Towards the end, the roster boss got significantly worse, and when we were on Cthulhu progression, we had a lot of very good people on Nostro, for example, Joe, wind up jumping ship to guild that were closer to a Cthulhu kill, and we wound up regressing, and that was ultimately what caused us to end rating with Girl Talk, that we didn't want to drag people through the 3 or 4 weeks that we could have stretched it out while we were um, you know actively falling apart. But towards the end, yeah, if you fall behind in a tier, you just the roster boss eats you alive.
So I remember when that time was happening, when we were kind of deciding the fate of the guild, the majority voted to just to call it. And I don't know exactly what everyone's motivations were, but I think a lot of people were just tired. But so do you think that that was the wrong call? Do you think it was salvageable?
Long term, no, it was not salvageable, but I think that we probably at the very end the decision was just, do we completely call this, or do we pug to fill this BWL and then call it?
I can't have a say in this. I was gone before then.
But yeah, no. To fundamentally fix the structural issue and get out of that, we would have had to back up probably to when we still had two raid teams and make different decisions from there.
Okay. Yeah, that was a that was a tough period. There was just so much going on, and yeah. On a scale from 1 to 5, um, 5 being most important, what do you guys place progression on in terms of like either firsts or speeds for the health of the guild?
As in, like, speed is in the same sense as progression.
Sure, just any of those things. Aiming for the top, like actually trying to get to the very top. I mean, like 1 to 2, 3 spots on the server.
3.5. It's important, but it's not the single most important thing.
For me, I would probably say 4, 4.5. Like I'll stay in a guild even if they're not progressing, if the raiders and everyone are really chilling, really nice, and everyone gets along. But at I can't stand beating my head against old content or something along those lines. Like, it's been out for so long. Like, how are we not gotten it so down? Like, why are we still making these mistakes? How have they not been handled yet? And stuff like that. like, I don't know. Like, I gotta do the content when it comes out. I can't stand, like, being so far behind or anything like that.
Yeah, no, you definitely can't afford to fall behind. And that might mean you have to make some sacrifices in order to keep up with other things that
Yeah.
you value in the guild.
So I'd rate progression like pretty high up there, like almost 4, like 4.5.
Okay. What about from 1 to 5 the guild culture? How important is that?
5.
I've
Okay, so that's what. So if you could describe a little bit about what's the best guild culture in your guys' opinion?
Pretty much everyone like what we had almost going, like there was no issues really. If it was there ever an issue, it could be solved within a couple minutes. Um, just you're not worried. You're not going to bed crying into your body pillow because player A is being a bastard to your entire guild. Just to make sure everyone is chill and everyone's having a good time because it's a game. We're not here playing our second jobs or something. Well, some people maybe, but like it's a game. I'm paying my sub. I'm paying to be here, and I'm paying to be here because I want to be here.
Okay.
Yeah, the things like the progression are important because they allow you to maintain the culture. That they allow you to continue doing this in the environment you want to be in. So the important thing is get the environment right, and then the other things are preserve it.
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. Okay, and then the last one is extracurricular stuff outside of raid. PvP, RP, dungeon farming. Where do you guys place that in terms of importance?
Uh, I I'd say that's a two. Like fundamentally, we're a raiding guild. We're here to raid. People will naturally become raid logging. It's very much more important if you're an officer to do things like that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be massively organized on a 40-man level.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like for every member, I expect them all to be raid logging. I mean, I expect them to be like dungeon farm and whatnot. I will be dungeon farm because I love dungeons so much. I play the game because it's fun as hell. And like, there's so many times in Psalm where I would just be sitting in trade chat or whatever, saying tank with Thunder Fury, 35 gold or whatever, just because I wanted to run the dungeon. Like, I didn't need anything. Or I would run dungeons with guildies. I didn't need anything, but I was willing to help them and just be there and have a good time. Like that's why I rank like community so high up. Like I'm in the raid team to raid with them. Yes, I want to see the content. Yes, but I'm also in this guild because I like these people and I want to hang out with these people. So I
Okay, so
am
so
what?
that's a 5 for you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Not like it, not as like a raid team 5, but like as a personal me 5.
Anything you guys want to promote? Any personal projects, anything like that? Websites, anything?
Come to Classic Air. That seriously, if you're watching this, you probably play on Psalm. Bring your tunes, bring your stuff. It's a lovely, vibrant cult community that you know is really a good experience.
This is where Brill and I differ because I'm gonna say come to Wrath on Atish Alliance side, not classic Andy like him. But no, I guess that's the only thing I promote. Like I got no project or anything going on. I'm ready to raid with some players from our guild again in Wrath. I'm not gonna be an officer or a GM by any means because I don't want that again. But you know, says yes should come to Wrath. Enough said.
If there winds up being a Psalm 2, which they've said that there will be, we will see. I will
Oh,
probably be putting together a project, Horde side PvP service.
one thing I will promote, Everlook. If you want a classic server, go to Everlook. They got like 20,000 people on their Discord. They don't even have a release date. You want classic? Go there. Because I'm going to be there when that shit launches.
Okay, so that was my last question, was where are you guys going next? And you guys just answered that. So
I'm going to
um,
teach with a couple guildies. He's going to Bigglesworth cluster on Whitemane on Classic. That's where we're going.
anything else you guys want to mention or add while we're here? Would you guys want to do a follow-up in a few months, see where everybody's at?
Yeah, I'll do a follow-up. The one thing I'd add is probably some of my most memorable memories I'm gonna have in WoW are from Season of Mastery and this guild. Uh, just the shit we pulled off and the shit we did, dude. You don't understand. Like that was some of the best shit I've ever done with like any guild I've ever been in. And I can't thank anyone enough who even still fucking talks to me after I left the guild so suddenly. For people listening, the guild pretty much broke up after I just ghosted the entire guild. I left every Discord. I unfriended anyone I had a connection with, and they still fucking talk to me. So I can't thank them enough to still being there and like being friends, even though I'm a cunt essentially.
Yeah, you're in the confession box right now. That's what's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah. I'm in the confession box, and Bro's my preacher. Uh, I'm an asshole essentially, and the guild broke up because of me.
I, I'm, I don't want to speak for you or defend you, but I mean, literally,
No,
you had put in the most hours out of anybody, maybe up there with Brill, in terms of helping people do stuff outside of raid, and I can understand how taxing that was, like especially when it came to the AQ bug farm. I mean, that was just insane.
yep,
I could understand how you could be fried from that.
yep. What do you got, Brill?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely owe everyone in the guild a debt of gratitude that, especially for Scared Lord, that was one of the big goals that I had for SOM and being able to make that real and the way we did it, that we went out and we dominated that event.
I was looking in the Discord when you were doing the speech that the guild's over, and I wanted to jump in because I heard it was a very emotional speech for you. But I did not. I didn't feel like it was a good time for me to be like, "Hey guys, I'm back. How's it going?" While Brilvian is giving this big emotional speech at the time. But dude, I fucking felt it. Even with me not being there, I felt that speech you gave them, dude.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah, that was a
That
hard
was a
one.
hard moment for everyone. What about you, Says? Where are you going? Because you were part of Girl Talk.
I got many people asking me this question, and I don't know the answer. I'm sure, as you guys know, I'm a vanilla lover. I love vanilla classic, doing it over and over and over again. Um, and I would hope for Psalm 2 or Classic 2. Um, I think I'm gonna have to try Wrath out of some, I don't know, curiosity, obligations, all of the above. But if there was a Psalm 2, I'd probably devote time into that if possible. But one thing that we skipped, and Gatsu, who was on last, was really eager to have me ask this question to everybody. But what would you want to see in Psalm 2 before we end?
I have no idea, but something like along the lines of like what Ascension WoW and what Turtle WoW are doing. Like throw us some random shit that no one ever does. Like make it something that people want to come back to. I don't know personally what I'd want to see, but if they'd ever do a Psalm 2, they need to really hit the mark with it.
Honestly, the MC and BWL content for Psalm 1 is good. Control C, Control V. I would add world buffs into a Psalm 2 just as a change of pace, probably with some easier and less griefable method of acquiring. And then I would really focus on AQ40 and Nax because those two raids missed the mark for me. But yeah, just we've seen Psalm 1, now let us go destroy it with world buffs for MC and BWL, and then make us new interesting fights for AQ and Nax.
You didn't feel like some of the mechanics in MC were too anti-melee, like Gar and Geddon, for example, or not Geddon, Gar and Golmag?
This entire game is so melee friendly that I have zero sympathy if you get knocked around for one fight.
He
I have
hates us
zero
dirty.
whatsoever.
Hates us dirty warriors.
If the optimal comp for a group is less than 20 warriors, I view that as an improvement, um, not a flaw.
Knew it.
People will be saying class balance in Blizzard's ear a lot. I don't think that's necessarily the rabbit hole they want to chase down. That part of the appeal of vanilla is that there are right and wrong specs, and there are, DPS classes that just do more, scale more. I think that's in large part a good thing in what gives vanilla its charm.
I'd agree with that. I'm actually even more on that other side of it, where you get me 38 warriors and I'm happy with that.
Mobs on me.
Okay, well, I guess we can wrap it up. Thanks for coming on, episode 2. We'll get this out soon, and anything else?
There's plenty of guildies waiting to hear this. I want you to know. Everyone who's coming to Wrath is like, first off, they can't wait to see what Brill looks like. The mystery is finally solved.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know, Brill was a mystery to everybody throughout all of Psalm. And anytime anybody asked him for a picture, he would post his character. Here we go, guys. Here's what I look like.
Yeah, so we all had our ideas of what Brill looked like, and some of us, me included, were way fucking off. But mystery is solved. We're also happy that we can finally now see Brill for who he is, and not the little dwarf female with the pigtails.
All right, is that it?
That's it for me. What do you got, Brill?
Yep, that's it. Good luck with the audio balancing. Sorry for recording this on the neighborhood potato.
Okay, I'm gonna end it here. Thanks.
No problem. Thanks for having us, dude.
All right, bye.